Now we move to our panel discussion. As you can see, we have 3 panel members, and I will be the panel moderator. Again, we have Nicolas from Microsoft join the panel, and we also have a Maxime, so Director Cloud Security Architecture from Royal Bank of Canada. And also we have a Marcos, Enterprise Information Security Architect join this panel. All right, thank you very much. Great. So as a panel moderator, it's my job to kind of guide the conversation and also ask you some difficult questions. But before we start, let's do a quick self-introduction. I know Nicolas already talked a little bit about yourself, so I'd like to give the chance to Maxime and Marcos. Can you just 30 seconds quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I can start if you want, Marcos. My name is Maxime Coquerel. I'm Director of Cloud Security Architecture for RBC. I work with RBC since 4 years now. My primary focus was on the Azure Security Platform, and right now I'm focused on the GCP Security Platform. And before that, I worked in Europe also, and I have a background in aerospace and defense.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Maxime. Marcos?
My name is Marcos. I started in working in IT in system administration and infrastructure domain, and then I went into security, and I started my journey in security was the SOC, the Security Operations Center, and eventually, through progression and time, I became a security architect. And security architect has different meanings. We're going to talk about that. And I have been working mostly in the financial space, and I have been doing security for a long time.
Excellent. As you can see, 3 of our panel members are experienced, I would call it cybersecurity experts, and also have an extensive experience in architecture. So the first panel question I'd like to ask our panel members really is, why architecture is so important in cybersecurity? Because we know architecture is critical, like for the construction, like for maybe IT software development. When coming to cybersecurity, what kind of role of architecture we provide to the cybersecurity? And I really like to hear your personal experience and or observation. Anyone wants to start? Maybe Maxime?
Yeah, if you want, I can. If you want, I can start. For me, that is very important because, as Nicolas said during his presentation, it's transversal activities, and you need that require a ton of collaboration between different team, between the business, between the legal team, and he said also during the presentation, or maybe sometime between the human resource team, and also from the security team. And I think if we don't have a melting pot of people engaged in the same direction to define the cybersecurity architecture, we will have a gap at the end because some piece will be missing. That will be my first answer about what I think what is cybersecurity architecture is critical. Yeah. I don't know, Marcos or Nicolas.
Marcos, you have.
I want to touch on something that Nicolas mentioned is very important. That when you try to do security later at the end of the development life cycle, it becomes more expensive and it's just harder to do. And in the security industry, we have been talking for many years, perhaps 10 or 12 years ago, we started talking about moving security to the left, bringing in that security input earlier in the design of the systems, to actually make it secure by design and bring all those considerations at the beginning of the life cycle of a project, not at the end. And I thought that's the right direction. And you have application security helping with that. And you have security architecture helping in that, because we bring those requirements and considerations and threat modeling at the beginning of of the project. Before the system is built, we're already talking about the controls that we're going to need, and that kind of guidance for the rest of the project is valuable. It brings security into the design and saves time and money at the end of the project.
Wonderful.
Yeah, if I can add on that
Go
is
ahead. Yeah.
at RBC, what we are currently doing, the security team is already in the same team of the cloud engineering team. And we work together from the day one, and it's not security from one side and engineering from another side, but it's one team with different persona and different role and responsibility. But from day one is one team. And you know, sometimes what is critical, and sometimes when we can have some friction, it's in terms of communication. And when you have all the people around the same project to attend to the same daily stand-up every day with the same goal to deliver the same platform, that is easier for everyone.
Excellent. Nicolas, you want to add anything?
No, I don't think I have a lot to add, except just if I want to highlight from the presentation, like really understand it's very important here to be partners, understand which data or what are the critical system. Again, maybe you have some data to protect. Maybe you want to be sure that all your systems are always up and running. Limit the risk for your business. And when I talk about the risk, like we talk about the attack, we didn't talk about some compliance needs that you may have, like some penalties if there is a breach or data that are compromised. There is always the fact of the breach, but there are also legal compliances that you need to be sure you think about. And again, you want to be from the beginning, like if there is an RP for a vendor of a solution, you want to be sure that you are able to put your inputs, go through the process. And again, I think our role is really to provide a safe solution, helping the business doing their work.
Wonderful. So some keywords I hear again regarding the role of architecture. Actually, two sides. One is the role of architect. The other is the role of architecture. Architects are people, right? So I think we see the value, like Maxime mentioned. Architect is like an integrator and a bridge among all kind of business units, the technical people and compliance. So translate requirements, understand requirements, and translate the compliance requirements. So that's a really important work for architect. And again, also here from the architecture point of view, I hear the keywords like shift to left, like security by design. So really, so we want to have a great design before we implement that one, right? So otherwise, we will carry a lot of what do we call it? Architecture debt. We will pay the price along the road. All right, so very cool. Thank you very much for the answering the first one. I do see some question already people ask. For example, Nick asked about the skills, the technical skills, architecture require. We have I think we have one question related to that in the later of the panel discussion. So stay tuned. We will touch on that one. All right, so my next question really is, okay, so we know we need to have a good design. Nicolas also touched on that one in the presentation. I'd like to ask our panel, what kind of a design considerations you have or you suggest to put to the cybersecurity? Because the challenge we understand right now is you have so many things to think about, right? So Nicolas mentioned you have a people, process, technology. You also need to think about business, compliance, scalability, usability, convenience. There's so many areas to consider. So how do you kind of come up with a good or great or suitable architecture for that company? Marcos, you want to start?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit of the conceptual methodology, just at the high level. Trying to balance all of these different requirements, factors, teams, and functional requirements and non-functional requirements is very difficult. Sometimes it's helpful to follow the design principles. there has been some talk about that. They say, okay, well, if you are developing a system and you are a system designer, you have to follow some principles to help you balance all of these requirements, right? And there are some specific principles for security. And again, it's defense in depth. I think Nicolas touched that on the presentation. We have to have more than one control. We have to have layers of controls. So for example, that kind of concept or least privilege or segregation is something that can help the architect when you work through your functional requirements and trying to meet compliance and specific security standards. You have that methodology, that approach to say, well, I have to remember that, I have to have several controls. I cannot have one single point of failure. I have to have my segregation of identity and access management through role-based access control. I need to have my data protection. So you have to work through a checklist, if you wish, a criteria of things that you need to check, right? In my case, I have a background of training as a pen tester. That helps me a lot to develop threat model. When I look at the system, say, okay, we have all of these requirements, all of these moving parts, but what are the potential avenues of attack for a hacker? What are potential weaknesses, and where do we need to put more care or additional control? So that threat modeling also helps to guide the process of what you need to do or check for.
Excellent. The checklist is very important to cover the base, right? So that's wonderful. All right. So anyone else want to share?
Yes, probably. Like I think what you mentioned all the points here, but where like your question at the beginning was, okay, how do I find the right balance? And again, it's talking with the different people. Like at the end, what do you want you want to balance probably the risk with the cost. When I see the cost, could be the cost of implementing something, could be a cost if you have a breach, could be a cost because you block the business from working, or whatever. And I have very good example, like in one of the previous organizations I work with, like we were storing credit card data, all the data that you need to use a credit card. And it was, so we are not supposed to, and it was not secured properly. So I had a lot of discussions with the CFO, the CIO, the retail director, with the legal, etc. And I was the only one to say, okay, no, we should not store it. And even I work with the Big Four, so I leverage the Big Four to help me in these discussions. And even when we came to the CFO and we say, okay, if we are caught storing credit card data, like we may have a fine, and the fine will be this amount. And the CFO at some point he was like, yeah, what do you want me to pay? 2 million, 5 million, 10 million? I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to accept the risk. So at the end of the day, you are here to provide recommendations. The business has to take ownership on some of the decisions. At the end of the day, we removed all the credit card data because with the help of the Big Four, like when you have a like in the boutique, you have credit card terminals to do the payments. And if you are cut to store credit card information, not only you will pay a fine, but you may lose the ability to use the payment terminal in the boutique. What does it mean? At the end of the business, you can't sell anything anymore in your boutique. That's a key message that needs to transit to the CFO, to the CIO, etc. Like if that's the end of the business, yes, they are going to act and they will not accept the risk anymore. So I think that's not your responsibility to take all the decision, but that's your responsibility as an architect to inform everyone, be a partner, and say, okay, as a business owner or as a CFO, you take the risk, fine, but this is the advice I had for you.
Wonderful. To help them to make an informed decision.
Yes.
Right. So that's a key message. It's not just the architect to make a decision. It really is a joint effort, right? So to the business, technology, process, all the people, right? So, all right, cool. Maxime, you want to add something?
For that, if you want, I can speak a little about our experience.
Yeah.
when we are doing a cloud security architecture at RBC, we have an internal cloud security framework. And inside this framework, we have a list of cloud control objectives, we call that, and that helps us to identify which security control we need to create. But that is this activity is done in same time of the threat model activities. And what we try to do is we try to do two threat model. One first threat model when we have a first MVP of the project, and another threat model before to go in non-production. And what is very interesting is, sometimes you have a big change between the two threat model because the business need grow and change, and that is also important to be ready to react and to adjust your security architecture. For example, I can give you an example. For example, the data classification. For the MVP, the data classification could be internal, but in reality, when you go to production, the data classification will be maybe confidential. Maybe you will store PII data in your application, and the security control you need to apply are not the same because and the investment in terms of security control you will create is also not the same. And I think that is also very important to take that in consideration, to think to have an iteration approach. Is not I have already seen in some of my previous experience, some organization they are doing an architecture review. Okay, that is done, but in reality, the project is only deployed 6 months, six months or 1 year after that. But in reality, the business change, the requirements are different, and the value of the initial cybersecurity architecture is very poor 1 year after. And I think that is also very important to take that in consideration.
We need to be agile.
Exactly.
Not just
yeah,
like,
it's iteration, and nothing will be perfect from day one. I think everyone is aware about that, but that is a continuous improvement exercise. Is when your application is in production, also you need to continue to monitor and also to identify new potential threats, new potential risk, and create the adequate security control for that.
Wonderful. Yeah, so a lot of practice, best practice we need to apply to not only framework, but the way we are doing things. Like when you mentioned, like how do we implement or design? So we cannot take a year to design a perfect architecture. You have to go through these iterations and get a feedback and continuous improve on those things. All right, wonderful. All right, so we actually touched on a lot of frameworks. I think Nicolas already touched on like cloud migration, adoption framework, a reference, like a zero trust, all those frameworks. I'm sure industry has all kind of other cloud best practice, those things. I really encourage you to do more. And I think Nicolas also provides some resource. You can learn more from there. But I want to specifically touch on cloud security, because as Nicolas mentioned, we have a digital transformation as a business. We have a cloud transformation as a whole IT, and the zero trust transformation like for security. So when we come into cloud security, especially the challenge like multi-cloud, right? So you have Azure, GCP, AWS, and many others maybe, and a hybrid cloud, right? So you have a public, private, and on-premises. So how do you kind of balance those things, design architecture for the overall cloud security? So I'd like to hear your insights on that. And maybe Maxime can go ahead because you take the...
I can jump on it definitively. I think for me, we have two major areas with multi-cloud strategy and with multi-cloud deployment. The first area is data protection. I think that is very important to know where the data will be stored and which type of data we will store. And for example, sometimes we think we have only I don't know, internal data, but in reality, it's not internal data. The data classification is maybe PII data, and that's why it's important to use tools like Microsoft provide like a Purview, for example, to do a regular scan of your data storage to identify which type of data you have, and to have an automatic data classification, and that will help you to put in place the right security control to protect adequately your data, because as Nicolas said during his presentation, you don't want to put the same energy to protect picture from vacation versus to protect critical PII data, for example. And I think that is also important to take that in consideration. And the second area for me, the second major area, and it's a very challenging area, it's identity, because you will have workload between different cloud, and this identity need to be managed. And it's when you start to deploy workload, it's easy to just create service principal, create API key to say, okay, this cloud will talk with this other cloud, and for that we will use this API key. But in reality, an API key from a security perspective, you don't want to have that in your architecture, because that if the API key is not rotated correctly, the API key can be leaked, can be used up by some other actor. You don't want to have that. And what you want to have that, and what we can see from the what the market is currently pushing, is to have scenario like workload identity federation, and to not have static API key to do the interaction between the different clouds. Yeah, that is my answer for the two major area, the two major critical area, from my opinion, for multi-cloud.
Very cool. Data, identity. So those are very important angle to look at to the cloud security and across multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. Wonderful. Anyone else want to add to this discussion?
Let me just make the comparison to 20 years ago. When we talk about the dot-com bubble, or the explosion of, around the year 2000, every company wanted to have a website. Every company didn't know how to get a website, but they said, oh, this is going to be a complete change in the way we do business. And after that period of time, we had the rise of e-commerce and social networks and everything else. Today, I believe we're going through a similar transformation. It's a similar point in time. We're moving to the cloud, and it is going to enable a whole set of new functionality and capabilities for the business. We don't see that as much as we saw that explosion on websites and new ways to communicate that was to the consumer. But the cloud moment, the cloud wars that we are today, these companies, the technology titans, they are introducing continuously. Every day they are introducing new functionality. So I think what we need to do as security professionals is learn to embrace the cloud, learn the cloud, fully utilize all of these new services. Some of the challenges I have seen, practical examples, that there's a service that one of the cloud providers offers, is a wonderful thing, but we don't fully take advantage of it. We're using maybe 10% of the features within that service. We don't really take advantage of all of it, right? So part of it is we need more training, and we need to learn, and we need more experimentation within the security teams to learn to use the cloud. And I believe great things are going to happen. There's always a problem with visibility, for example. We want to monitor identity. We need to monitor the use of data. We need to take care of the security business as usual. And there's now new tools and new services in the cloud. I think is an exciting time to be in technology and to be in security.
Lots of things to learn.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you mentioned very critical part is there are so many things on cloud, and many of us actually don't know what they are. And even we work on some technology, maybe only use like onto day-to-day, maybe 10%, only 20% of that. For example, one question I saw people submit about Microsoft Defender, right? So this is a very powerful tool. And there are not a lot of capabilities for the Defender family. So what's this used for? What's not? How do you cover? So there are lots of things to learn. And Nicolas, would you like to add more things on this?
I think the only thing I wanted to add is really like try to keep it simple, and especially when I'm talking about monitoring, alerting, etc. Try to have like usually people start to have a SIEM, a SOC to monitor. So when I'm talking about simplicity and central monitoring, is really about compatibility, portability, because the cloud you are using today, is it going to be the cloud that you are going to use tomorrow? So portability, which means also exit close to your contract, integrations, and where is it safer to store the data? Like you may have multiple cloud providers, or even maybe you want to manage yourself your infrastructure either on-prem or on the cloud. So where is it safer? Is it safer managed by a SaaS vendor, or is it safer managed by your IT? So that's why it's very important. Again, if you are going to evaluate solution or go to RFP or whatever, like do an assessment on the solution. Maybe sometimes companies have like SOC 2 report or some easy report that you can look at and easily compare. And before moving too far in trying with one solution, say, okay, what are the kind of data I have to protect? What is the risk for my organization? So depending on where I should put the bar, is it safe to put the solution into here? But I think the key also is really about what I mentioned before. You know what you use today, you don't know what you are going to use tomorrow. So be sure that you have compatibility, portability, integration.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I don't work for Microsoft, but I have to say this: they have a wonderful approach with many of the services because we are in a transition period. All the companies are going to be working in a hybrid environment that we still have the data center and we're moving to the cloud and we're half and half, or we have multi-cloud. And I think the best approach is to have one service that, could manage my logs in the cloud and manage my logs from the data center. And I can have a single pane of glass for the management or detection, for example, or that kind of integration that I can manage my virtual machines in the cloud, but also that same service can, through an agent, manage my virtual machines or my servers on the data center. We need that kind of approach, and I have seen it in Microsoft. So thank you for that, because we need to get that unified approach to all of these hosting locations.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I can add, on the top of that, also it's important to take in consideration not all the applications are ready to move to the cloud, because a lot of organizations want to move to the cloud, but in reality, what they are doing is just to move virtual machine, and at the end they will have a huge billing at the end of the year, and they don't understand why they have that, because in the head of a lot of people, cloud help to save cost. Yes, from my opinion, I think that is true. It's true if you have the right application, if you have an application designed to use managed services in the cloud, but not to just do a lift and shift of a virtual machine. I think we need to see different maturity level. I think that could be a first step to maybe move your virtual machine with your application to a cloud platform like Azure, AWS, or GCP. But after that, if you want to try to save money and try to use, if I can say that, the advantage of a cloud platform, sometimes you have no choice. You need to redesign and rethink your application to leverage managed services, and from that you will save money, and also you will increase your security posture for your application. And I think that is also very important, because it's easy to say, okay, I'm on the cloud, but in reality, if it's just a lift and shift of your virtual machine, it's okay, you are on the cloud, okay, but what is the business value for your company? And I think that is important to have that in consideration. And also to jump on the comment of Nicolas about some organization are not sure if it's a good solution to to move the SOC team to an MSSP, for example, or to external that. I think the questions organization need to think is, what is my core business, and which value I will bring to my core business. If I keep a SOC internal team versus to invest on my product, because at the end, a lot of companies are not a technology shop. They have a product, and they should to continue to invest on the product, not to create additional IT services inside the organization. Because at the end, we can see some financial organization in Canada. Sometimes they have maybe more IT people versus financial people and advisor and stuff like that. And I think that is a paradigm we have.
That's a great point. That's exactly why we need an architect.
Yes.
Right. So, because this is a very complex, doesn't matter it's the cloud or the overall cybersecurity things. We need an architect to give us, I would call it architecture view, or my definition really is your big picture. Because this big picture will cover not only technology side, but also the business compliance. Because as a great architect, you have to have a deep understanding of requirements and the constraints, right? So you have to find the best solution to balance all those factors, and also design for that specific business, because each business is different. It's not like my architecture can be used for all the companies. Really, it depends on which company you are in. So that's a value architect bring to that. It's like a customize your house, right? So really need to listen to all the stakeholders. All right, so we move to the next question, because Marcos mentioned that there's a big change, the revolution, like a cloud, website, internet, cloud, all those things. And I would say the bigger challenge will actually already arrived is AI. And we do see questions from audience about AI. In Nicolas' presentation, actually touched a little bit on the Microsoft Security Copilot as well, which is still a preview, I believe, at this moment. But it will have a potential to change the landscape and the way we are doing business and the way we are doing security and the way we respond to incidents. So I'd like to hear your opinions, because for those like a generative AI, like Chat GPT or GPT, and things like Copilot, Security Copilot, how that will change the landscape. And as a cybersecurity architecture, what's your view on that? Marcos, you want to go?
First.
Or
Yeah.
Nicolas, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, happy to take that. For me, it's the AI, and that's linked to a question we had on the slide on the chat. Like, is it going to replace some tools like Sentinel, etc.? I don't think it's necessarily going to replace tools, but it's going to help us to be faster. Faster could be in developing, in coding, etc. Faster in researching, because, and clearly I tried ChatGPT. To be honest. I'm sometimes late, but I tried ChatGPT yesterday because I was Googling something, and it took me some time to find the right information on the right website. And I was like, yeah, let's try ChatGPT. And I asked the question, and it just gave me the right information. I did not have to read like 10 different websites to get the information. So I think it's not necessarily going to replace some tools. It's going to provide either great information to the tools or great information to the people who are going to decide, like even to the SOC analyst. I can ask a question, it's going to provide me an answer. I don't have to look at even, and that's like the SOC is really a good example for me, because when you work in the SOC, usually like in your SIEM, you have a lot of alerts coming, you will see what's coming, etc. But like if you need to go deep dive, you won't have all the information in your SIEM. So you may need to connect to different tools to see the deep details. Asking an AI tool to get that information for you, to connect to the different tools and get the information, kind of correlate or whatever, it's going to help you to respond faster. So I think it's really, when we talk about an attack, we talked before about, okay, different point of controls. I want to stop the attacker as soon as possible. So if I can write very quickly, I can stop what's happening on my network. So I think reaction time is very reaction time, productivity, better protection, etc. But I think there is something important that we should not forget. First of all, the AI is built by human. So it could only be as perfect as we are. Or it's going to evolve. And I think like what we need to be very careful is Maxime mentioned before, protecting the data is important. AI will have access to a lot of data. Like if you want to have value with the AI, it's going to have access to a lot of your data, a lot of your system to provide the right information at the right time. So protecting the sensitive information or protecting your AI is going to be very, very important. But again, I think it's a balance about like risk, cost, advantage. But it's a journey that we are just all starting.
Wonderful. Yeah, challenges and opportunities, right? So really, those are like any other new technologies, and we need a time to settle down a little bit to really figure it out. Okay, with the power and the best way. I'm sure the industry catch up very quickly, and we will see a lot of use cases, and the landscape will be formed. But that's also the beauty of all those like AI, right? So they give us the more reason to learn new things. All right, so
I think,
Maxime
you know,
or Marcos, anything you want to add?
let me bring a slightly different point of view. I am excited about the opportunities, but yes, there are challenges, and there may be some disruption ahead. AI right now is not going to replace the security analyst or the security advisor or an IT auditor or a security architect. But what I see may happen in the next couple of years is that a security, a SOC analyst that is using AI may replace a SOC analyst that is not using the tool, right? So it is up to us in each one of our roles in security to get familiar with the technology, with AI, and exactly do what you mentioned, Bryan, to come up with interesting use cases. How can I use this particular AI for my job? Something that is very innovative and something that is going to be very useful, because we have the attackers on the other side of the equation that are doing exactly the same. You know, they are trying to use the tool, come up with a perfect use case to breach or to hack into our system. So we need to keep up.
Perfect.
In my team at RBC, we have already started some POC to use GitHub Copilot to automate the generation of the security policy, of the Azure security policy. And you can ask the engine to say, okay, I want to have a security policy to prevent public storage bucket, and that will automatically generate you a security policy, and you can reuse that and apply that. But from my opinion, I see that like an assistant, not to replace someone, but like an assistant, and that will help you to create code faster and to deliver and you know all the boring tasks, because when you are a security developer and you create security control every day, you have some repetitive tasks and some very boring tasks. And I think the good thing with solutions like GitHub Copilot or like ChatGPT is all these repetitive task and boring task is to move that to the AI engine and to say, okay, do do all this job for me, and in my case, I will focus my time to more advanced and complex scenario, and I will try to save time during my day to be more efficient. That is my opinion from how I can see AI.
Wonderful.
And let me mention some of the problems, because we talk often about the problems with AI, and everybody said, well, it's a black box, it's unexplainable, and that is a problem by itself. We don't know how ChatGPT is making these recommendations. We don't know exactly, right? So we need to be able to explain how the system works. And the other consideration is ethics. We need to develop AI engines or systems with ethical boundaries. And that is true, because imagine that a nation state sponsors the creation of their own AI engine, and they don't implement any kind of ethical measures, and that would be a very powerful weapon for an attacker to use against us, right? It would be a very powerful attacker that it would be very difficult to stop if they have access to that tool. So we talk about the black box, we talk about the ethics, but I also think it's a problem of access. I had a presentation recently, and they were asking, in the context of security, what do you think of ChatGPT? Is it going to be a problem for the attackers, the defenders? How are we going to keep up? And the opinion of the panel was that, well, as long as it's ChatGPT, we're going to be able to keep up. But then I was thinking, well, that implies that the playing field is level, that we have access to the same AI. In reality, whoever has access to the more powerful AI, or the AI that doesn't have the ethical limits, is going to have an advantage over the defenders, for example. So that access, whoever has the most money, whoever has the access to the better AI, is going to be able to break systems and controls easier. So it is a very complex problem, and it's going to be not immediately, but we are going to see great advances in the next couple of years. All these tech companies are creating their own product. Is again very exciting time, and there are a lot of things to keep an eye on.
Wonderful. Basically, what I hear is, on one side, AI won't replace people, right? So at least for now, we don't see that will happen immediately. On the other side is it will enable ourselves to do more or focus more on the important tasks. Just like I was a developer before. I was never good at set up a server or a connect a network or set up a switch, all those things. But when cloud coming, you don't need to do those things, right? So those are the things I can click, and I can enable for that. So I can focus more on the development side or the things I love most. So in a way, AI right now can also help with us. The other day, I worked on the Microsoft Azure Sentinel. I work on the KQL, Coastal Query Language. I was not good at that one. So I quickly asked ChatGPT, okay, here's the source code, explain this to me, right? So he quickly, depends on how you ask questions, they will construct like a teacher, really teach you, okay, within a short period of time, I know, okay, what is this about? So those are the things you can quickly gain the knowledge. But of course, like Marco said, the privacy responsibility and how do you make that transparency? So those are the things industry need to catch up. But I think like Microsoft, the security copilot, based on the current information, it's also really emphasize the privacy. Basically is within your organization. It's not like open to public. Really, your data is your data within your organization, within your domain. It's not like share. So become your private AI, right? So
it is, but like when we talked before about the weakest point, and one of them is always the identity, the end user. So if you have access to the AI for your company and I get access to your account, then I have access to everything within your org. So I think this the first point where I see a major, like we need to be very careful when we do that, because even if we have all the security controls in place, like what I frequently mention, like you can have all the firewalls you want, all the security controls in place. If you have access to some data and I have access to your account, I have access to everything you can access. And I think that's
identity.
what kind of worried me in the AI is really about we need to be better and better at, like we have some solutions, but there's still a lot of companies or even people at home who don't have a good hygiene about the identity.
I guess as an architect, very soon, I'm sure it's happening right now. Your boss will ask you, okay, add AI to your architecture framework to see how does that fit to your overall architecture, and maybe describe some roadmap kind of things. All right, so we can talk about this forever. We have to move on. And last question really regarding back to the talent development, career development. You guys are experienced architect, you have been in industry for many years, and you observe all kind of aspects of business, technology, process, people, compliance, all those things. So for people relatively new to this field, especially when they are interested about, after listening to your talk, they are interested about become a cybersecurity architect as a career path. What kind of skills and knowledge or suggestions you can provide to them?
Well, it's difficult to say. There's not an official definition of a security architect, but I think basically in most companies is recognized as a senior role that it has a completeness of vision. Sometimes they call it that, it has a complete a set of opinions about everything. So if they ask you about, securing big data or securing compute or network, you should be able to answer. So based on that, I think, if you want to be a security architect one day, you need to work on your core competency. If you know about development, or if you know about the network or data, work on that, but try to increase your scope, and learn other things, and try to study and get certifications on different things so you understand the full picture. And we have mentioned that the full picture a few times before.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm completely. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Nicolas.
Yeah, so whatever, but I think I agree. Like I think what I got from your message is like we need to have strong foundations in IT and security, have the big picture, and I would just add to that, like, be curious. Like we don't know everything, we can't know everything. It's just like curiosity, and don't be afraid to ask questions. You talk about certification, like I know some of the famous one are from IC Square, etc. But yeah, there are different certifications that you can have. But I think what really helped me in my career is like you need to have some experience. And that's where at the beginning of my career, I worked for IT consulting companies. It was not necessarily always the dream job or what I wanted, but I went like one day I worked for one customer with a specific architecture with some solutions. The next day I was working with a different company which has different needs, different business, different solution, different architecture. So at the beginning of your career, I think what you want is to be able to explore different environment, different needs, different solutions, have a lot around you. So this is why IT consulting is very good at the beginning to have not only to focus on one specific needs from one company or one specific solution, like I want to know only the Microsoft tools, etc. Like there is a lot around, and whatever you are going to, especially when moving to multi-cloud, you will never have only one vendor in an organization. Like you need to be able to integrate everything. So I think to gain experience, consulting services is great, and then join events like today and talk with everyone to keep up to date.
Yeah, you have a lot of things to learn. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm agree with you, Nicolas. I think it's very important to be passionate about a specific topic, to have a strong foundation, to be curious, and to have humility. And sometimes it's good. In my case, sometimes I like to have the feeling to be the more stupid people in the room and try to ask stupid question, because with stupid question, sometimes it's maybe a stupid question for you, but maybe not for your coworker, and that help you to grow and to grow very fast. That is I think that is also very important, to not be shy. And I think when we are at the beginning of our journey, and sometimes we it's sometimes challenging because we say, okay, if I ask this question, people will think about that. No, please go direct and ask your question. No stupid question. I think that is very important. And if I can add in addition, of that is when we try to hire people at RBC, for me, the most important thing to identify for a candidate is to identify people who know how he can continue to learn, because it's a continuous improvement exercise. And if you have a methodology to learn a new subject, to become a subject matter expert on this area, that is something of great to have this approach and to have this methodology, to have this learning methodology. For me, that is from my personal opinion, that is the most important skills you need to develop, because technology are moving very fast. The number of new services in Azure are completely crazy. Every year they release new feature, and it's impossible for you to know all the feature. But if you have the learning methodology, that will be easier for you to take this new area and learn about this new area and increase your skill about this area, and don't hesitate to ask a stupid question, because in reality, no one has a stupid question.
Excellent.
And one of the questions earlier, I believe it says, what is the threat that you have missed before as a security architect? And the reality is that no one, not the best security architect, even when he's supposed to be a senior position, no one is perfect. So yeah, you always have room for improvement, keep learning, and make sure that you don't miss any particular threats or risks, but there's always that possibility that you can always be better. So yeah, it's continuous improvement all the time.
Excellent. Continuous learning, always be curious about new things and keep learning all kind of things, right? So it's not just only one. You need to have a comprehensive view on many components. And another very important part, like Maxime mentioned, you need to ask questions, right? Because go back to, I think, Nicolas' point in the early presentation. The number one kind of things you need to think about really is how do you understand the requirements, constraints, right? So, but how do you get that information? You need to ask questions. Otherwise, how do you get that information? And especially that's important in the AI age, because now you need to ask great questions to ChatGPT, right? So then you get answers. If you don't have a great questions, you don't have a great answers. So questions, in a way, more important than answers, right? So that's a very important message. Considering the time, we actually, for this panel discussion, we almost talk about for a full hour. So there are still a lot of things we can cover. And I do see people ask all kind of questions. But just to respect everybody's time, we have to wrap it up. So before we finish this panel discussion, I'd like to ask our panel members, if you can provide just one suggestion to our audience regarding the cybersecurity architecture or architect the best practice, what kind of things would you like to say? So it's kind of like your departing message. So what's your top recommendation for cybersecurity architecture?
From a practical point of view, just for people who want to become an architect, what is becoming more and more common is that the job interviews are structured as system interview, so or system design interview. So if you want to get into the architecture space, you can study things like TOGAF, that is a methodology, or you can study the actual examples that you are going to go to the interview. They will ask you, can you tell me how would you design a Netflix or an Amazon.ca from scratch. What do you need for a transactional e-commerce website? How would you design it? And you have to do a diagram and think about all the components of the system and how you would architect it with different parts. And for a security architect, the usual question is, show me the controls. What controls are you going to put in that diagram? So it's a mental exercise. Doesn't cost anything. There's a lot of resources on the internet. You can read about system design interview, and that brings you into that mind space of the architect point of view.
You need to have an overall picture, the system view about, okay, how things can build from scratch, right? So although you don't need to physically implement each details, but you need to have this big picture in your mind. All right, cool. That's very, very important.
Yeah, for me, if I can jump on it, I think to have technical skill is good, but to have good soft skill, it's better. That will be my conclusion, because you can be very good to do technical stuff, but if you are not good to communicate, share, exchange with people, that will stop you, because you will have some border around you, and that will complicated for the other people also to work with you. I think soft skill is good, and from about that, in my case, what I like is to work with people from different area. For example, you can be a cloud security architect with a bachelor in biology or in history. If you are passionate about a subject, about an area, and you want to become an expert about that, that is also possible. It's not because you don't have the good certification or the good degree that will block you. I think it's also very interesting for organization to have people with different mindsets and a different approach to resolve an issue, and not to have everyone who think with the same model. Yeah, that is my conclusion. Thank you.
Yeah, communication, power skills.
Yeah.
Right? So the soft skills are power skills that will serve you for long run. Technology can change and things can change, but those communication and deal with people and really understand the needs of people and transform that one to your requirements and design, that's critical. And but not only that, after you have something, you have to go back to educate them, to get buy-in, to get how to help them to implement those. So communication as an integrator, architect is playing very important role. And all right, Nicolas.
Yeah, I think it's very close to what Maxime said before, and I think I talk about that during the presentation, like partnership. If I have one word, it's going to be partnership. And again, I think we mentioned that, like, first of all, you don't necessarily have to take all the decisions, but you need to be there to drive the decision, to provide advice when you make decisions, and don't always say no. Really work with the business, and you will learn sometimes about something else, not necessarily about the IT. Like, I had opportunities to visit some classrooms, to visit some manufacturers, even to go to White Room, where you need to have the blues, you need to have the hat and everything. And you really understand about how people are working and what are the challenges. Sometimes even just printing something could be a challenge depending on what are your needs on the field. So it's really about, be a partner, don't be afraid to just go. We are used to work from home and virtual, etc. But if there is a need to go on site and visit someone, go and visit. It will only provide you with values and help you to have a broader picture and see something else that is not only focused on IT.
Yeah, partnership is very important. Not only your team, but internal, external vendors and all the consultants, and really understand people's needs and really to listen to other people's best practice, so which will help you to improve. And the networking, right? So like today's event, if you join, then you kind of get a different perspectives, and it may open the new door or opportunities for you. All right, so considering the time, we can talk forever, but beautiful day outside. I also want to respect your personal time. So again, thank you very much for 3 of our panel members, and also thank for people online. You take your precious personal time joining our session. We really appreciate that. I'd like to ask everyone, give yourself, and also especially for our 3 panel members, a really good virtual applause. Thank you very much for joining today's session and sharing your insights with us. Thank you very much.